Welcome to our Friday Business Report with SDSU Marketing Lecturer and Bottom Line Marketing's Miro Kopik. Miro, welcome.
Thank you, Susan.
First question is about this nationwide investigation into parents willing to spend big bucks to send their kids to Ivy League colleges. Is this the largest college admission scam ever prosecuted by the Justice Department? It covers schools from coast to coast, including the University of San Diego. So how do you think this could affect the value of a college degree?
Well, it certainly is from what I understand, the largest prosecution. It really kind of rocks at the foundation and core of college education. Now, it's interesting to note a lot of these are private schools, but there's a few public schools like UCLA that's part of the mix. And that kind of creates some challenges. And there's a few dynamics that really create this circumstance. Over the last decade, it's far easier for students to apply to universities, whereas 15, 20 years ago, you can apply to one UC or two UCs. Now a student can apply to all of them. So the number of applicants to every school in the country has increased exponentially. The value of an education is still very high. That's why people are doing this. The problem is that it really disadvantages those middle and lower middle income families who want their children to go to college. Because what is clear is that although in the short term these schools will take a reputational hit, it's going to force them specifically to look at their admissions process, make sure these backdoor things with, for example, with the coaches admitting people who are not athletes to school are cleaned up and done really transparently. But the schools, both the quality of the faculty, the education, the alumni network, and the prestige is a reason for people to want to go to these schools. And that's not going to change now or in the future.
Okay, and from college admissions to the spending plan at the White House.
Washington has a spending problem, and it endangers the future prosperity of our nation for generations to come. This budget contains nearly $2.7 trillion in savings, more spending reductions proposed than any administration in history. This budget will balance in 15 years.
How does the president's spending plan affect the nation's trade deficit?
Well, you know, the announced budget recently is a real challenging budget. It's going to add $4.8 trillion to the deficit overall over the next decade. There's spending cuts in every category, from agriculture to education to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, an increase in spending on defense. To fund some of the deficit, two things. Tax receipts. One of the problems with the tax receipts is that individual tax returns are down 3%. Business tax returns are down 23%. The business tax cut only gave us 2 good quarters. So how does the president fund the rest of it? Through the tariffs. And the tariffs actually more than doubled, from $13 billion to over $25 billion this past year. The problem is the trade deficit itself ballooned by the end of 2018 by over 20%. So even though we have tariffs on these countries, Americans are importing far more goods, and one of the problems is, even with these tariffs, trade with China, with the European Union, and Mexico and Canada, those deficits increased. The problem is that with the budget cuts the president is proposing, programs are going to help affected industries like agriculture or export promotion. All these programs are looking to be cut, which is a real challenge for people who are trying to export and narrow that trade deficit.
Okay, and finally, a new report from U.S. News shows San Diego ranks among one of the best places to live in California, based on weather, of course, median salary, and home prices. Plus, another report from Trulia shows San Diego has the second most home price reductions in the nation so far this year. So what do you think this says about the reality of real estate in our region?
Well, it just says that we've talked about this on a number of recent weeks, and that really the price equilibrium is kind of stabilizing. One of the things that we saw 20%, 20% of the homes had price reductions in the month of February. In November, just a few months ago, it was 30%. If you go back to November of 2018, it was only 8%. And what part of it is the euphoria of real estate agents in a buyer's market. Right now, we have about 2 months worth of inventory in the market. Most real estate experts will tell you that to have a very stable real estate market, you need about 6 months of inventory. So what's happening is that real estate agents are really kind of asking a lot more for certain homes in areas that maybe aren't worth it. And so they're having, they already bake in this reduction, but what it shows, what it kind of illustrates is that potentially there's softness in the market, and the reality is that there isn't. Our rents are fairly high altogether, although the rate of increase has declined, and our housing market, still you have a $550,000 average price for a house. So we're amongst some of the more expensive markets in the country.
Okay, Miro Kopik, thank you so much.
Thanks, Susan.